Welcome back to Knowledge Resources Speaker Feature. Today, we're sitting down with Anja van Beek, who is an agile talent strategist and an internationally regarded leadership expert. She has tons of experience helping teams with internal change, and she is one of the first authorized in agile people, being a facilitator and a professional. We are very excited to be hosting 2 workshop series with her in the coming months, one being Agile HR and Agile Leadership. We'll be taking a look at these workshops in today's interview, as well as some of the main lessons Anja has learned from her very interesting career. Anja, thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning, Amy. It's lovely to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
I'd like to dive straight in, Anja, with just a little bit of an introduction into your very interesting career. You have over 25 years of experience in people management and HR, including being the VP for people at Sage. You were in charge of Asia and Africa and Australia, which is obviously a huge accomplishment from your side. What are the main lessons in agility and leadership that you've learned throughout the years?
Yeah, when I reflect back on my role as head of HR, I mean, there's really so many lessons. And when I think of agility, the first one that comes to mind for me was that our HR team, I'm very proud to say that they were really an excellent team. And I mean, it was that team that we worked together when we won the best company to work for the Deloitte survey 3 times consecutive years. And even though we were rated the best company to work for, what I have realized in hindsight, that the HR team, simply because we were not aware and involved in the ways of working in the development space, we were actually like a bottleneck. So even though we were rolling out these what we thought perfect performance management systems, we could not understand why the development team is continually missing deadlines and continually not listening to the requests that we send. And I think that was one of the first lessons that I have learned in agility, that it's so important to understand from an HR perspective, what is agile all about? And how does that influence the way that teams work together, and what are their rhythms? Because so often we think of a rhythm as it's a financial year, or it's a tax year, or it's a January to December year. And in agile, there's different rhythms that we need to be aware of. So I think I saw the benefit of really working closely together with all the different departments. But as I said, especially development, when they at that point in time were the only department that was using agile tools and practices.
And I do know in one of the workshops, we talk a lot about the relationship with the HR business partner, how to develop that role. But I want to ask you a little bit about the workshops themselves. It's such an interesting, I want to say, platform that you're part of. And as I said, one of the first to be authorized to do so. Could you tell us a little bit more about the Agile workshops? What do they mean? And what does the certification mean that you do get at the end of it?
Yeah, I must say, I think it's really a well-designed workshop. So when you've mentioned that we're looking at 2 different courses. So basically, we start off with what we call the Agile Fundamentals workshop. So that's 5 modules, looking at things of introducing the principles of agile people specifically. I mean, looking from it from a people's perspective, then looking at that important concept of psychological safety. I mean, psychological safety is a term that we hear very, very often. It's lots of articles, Harvard Business Reviews, etc. But just to understand, why is psychological safety so critical in an agile way environment? It's actually also make people safe is one of the agile values. Then we move over looking a little bit at what are the structures, what are some of the processes, and some of the strategies that you have in an agile organization. Because what we do see does not necessarily mean that you have to change your structure, but you do need to be aware of what's the implication and what are different options available. We then focus, the 4th module in the fundamentals workshop, focus on how do we create an agile culture? And what does that entail? What does it mean? And what do we need to focus on? And then we close off with a module talking about creating the conditions for change. Because I mean, especially if an organization embark on a huge shift In this example, it's an agile shift. We all know that it does not happen overnight. We all know that if you want to impact and change behaviors, you need to be very mindful in the way that you approach that. And we delve a little bit into that topic. So once we've completed the 5 modules in the fundamental course, we then split. So then there's 2 tracks. On the one side, there's the HR focus, and on the other side, it's the leadership focus. And on the agile focus, very much looking at what's the role of HR in an agile organization, looking at how can we turn, adopt some of the practices, what tools are available for us. We specifically look at goals and performance and compensation. One of the modules look at talent acquisition. How do we recruit the people? How do we onboard people? What seems to be the best way to approach this in an agile organization? And then the last module is all about learning and development and employee engagement. And I always tell the people, if you think of agile HR, there's no recipe that I can give you. It's not like it's a tick box. This is step 1, and this is step 2, and this is step 3. Agile is a mindset. And that's why it's critical for people to have a look at all these different modules and see, okay, but if this is the principle, how can I apply it in my environment? Because each organization is different. And what's working in the one might not necessarily work for the other organization. So that's the agile HR track. On the leadership side, we then focus specifically on how do you lead with agility? What type of behaviors enable agility? And I always say that leadership development is personal development. And that's why in the course, we specifically focus a little bit on how do you know and connect yourself, doing a little bit of looking into mind traps and biases, those types of topics. We have one module looking at emotional intelligence, and then the last one looking at skillful communication. And that's the 10 modules that we cover.
Sounds absolutely incredible, very interesting, and I'm sure to a huge benefit of all attending. Another benefit of the workshops is that you actually get an international certification. Could you just explain to the viewers a little bit more about what this would mean and how it could benefit you? Who accredits it?
Yeah, so that's, I think it's such an important question. Thank you for highlighting that one. So the IC Agile is an organization, an international organization. So they're not a training provider. What they do is they support organizations with transforming the whole business to be more agile. So they not source, but they vet the training providers. They have specific learning outcomes, and they make sure that the training is aligned to the specific learning outcomes for that focus. So when you look at Agile or IC Agile, you will see that it's a variety of courses from if you look at the development space and the Scrum and all those types of focus areas, to the more where we focus on the business agility side. So yeah, they're internationally known. And I think what I love about that is even the certificate. So how does it work? The training is divided in this way that we focus on spaced repetition and different ways of learning. So first of all, there's pre-work. So before you start your training or the session, you log on to our learning management system, and there's videos to watch and articles to read. Then we have a group session, and I love the interaction in the session. We tap into the collective intelligence of the room, and we learn from one another. And then at the end of the lesson, there's specific questions that you need to ask. And at the end, you have an assignment. So the assignment touch on all the different modules, link back to a specific learning outcome, and then you submit your assignment. And if you can demonstrate that you can apply the principles that we spoke about, and that you demonstrate that you're matching the learning outcomes, then IC Agile issue you with a certificate. And I think especially in the world of work that we operate in, I mean, we all know that it's so needed to be agile and adaptive. And that's why I say, especially for HR teams, it's critical to just have that certification behind you. I think it means a lot. I was actually talking to one of my not associates, but one of my clients. And she said, Anja, but where do we find these agile HR professionals? Because I'm looking for them and I just can't find them. And I think it's so valuable to have that as part of your CV.
Well, I'd love to give our viewers a little bit of a preview of what they'll learn. So I'd like to zoom in to one of the modules. I know you mentioned in the Agile Leadership course that leading others starts with developing your own self-leadership. Just as sort of a closing and some good advice and tips that we can give to the HR practitioners who want to become more agile and better leaders, what advice would you give to them to develop their own leadership and become more agile?
Yeah, so I think that personal development for me really starts at knowing and understanding yourself. I think very often it's important for us to understand what your values, what motivates you, what drives you in life, because once that is clear to you, it impacts so many other things. I also think it's critical for us to realize the importance of being mindfully present in every moment. And the reason why I'm saying that is you need to look at and be curious at how do you behave when you're under pressure, when you're in a situation with one of their departments, or perhaps in a conversation with your CEO and they under pressure. How do you change and adapt your style? So I think it's really looking at those self-reflection. And as I've mentioned, looking at EQ. So in one of the modules, we do have a look at, do you understand and where your emotions are coming from? Do you recognize them? And how do you use them to your best ability? But I think for me, if I think of personal development, it's really, we're living in a world that craves connection. And if you understand how your own body-brain system works, how our brains operate and think, and just how we behave in that stressful environment, or when it's perhaps a little bit more pressure than normal, I think it's a lot easier for you then as a leader to connect in a different way with your teams as well. Because I mean, for me, it's critical to think human centricity. I'm just so passionate about that topic, but really to understand, starting with you, how do you create that environment for people and teams to thrive and to flourish and to bring them their best selves to the work. And the reason why I'm saying that is, I think one of the biggest lessons that I have learned when I was HR director is I've experienced it firsthand, is to focus on people. And when you focus on people, you do see the results in the bottom line. But the focus on people starts with yourself.
So certainly a lot of personal benefit as well as professional benefit that we can have from attending these workshops. Thank you so much, Anja. Thank you for taking us through it, for being so passionate about it as well. Such an enjoyable conversation. And I'm sure the attendees will enjoy conversing and engaging with you at the workshops themselves.
Yeah, looking forward meeting the different delegates. We've just finished an assignment, the last one that we started in November. And I'm so pleased to say that we have a few more delegates that were certified in proficient in the Agile HR and Agile leadership space. So I'm really looking forward meeting the next group of delegates.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Anja.
Thank you, Amy.